be transitioning solely to our role of soil carbon in soil health. You heard about basic of soil health and then soil health status in different parts of New Mexico. So I will be, on my presentation, I will be basically focusing more into why we are putting soil health and then soil carbon together, and then how this soil carbon plays central role in soil health, and then what are the management strategies we implement to improve soil organic matter storage, to improve soil health, and then overall agricultural productivity, sustainability. So let's start with the definition of soil organic matter. When we talk organic matter or organic carbon, the organic matter is plant and animal residues. Anything we talk in soil organic matter, they are any form of plant and animal residue in different forms of decomposition, different state of decomposition. Could be fresh residue, active microbial community, to partially decomposed, and then microbial byproducts. And when we use organic matter and organic carbon, sometimes organic carbon, carbon sequestration, you hear those terminology different than people talking organic matter, but they are actually same. All the organic material have 50 to 60% of carbon on their mass, organic mass. So when we talk organic carbon storage or organic matter storage, pretty much the same thing. And this organic matter here, you can so you can see on this picture, different color of the soil. Just by looking at the soil, you can know low to high organic matter storage. If you have more carbon, more organic matter in the soil, it's relatively darker color, and then less organic matter, lighter in color. Let me try to use this one. Okay, it works. And then, so in this picture, you can see like how organic matter or interaction of organic matter and microbial community can regulate different soil processes, different soil health processes. Because you have a plant and animal residue, it goes into the soil, and then during this decomposition process, microbial community utilizes this organic material, plant and animal residue, transform into stable organic matter, and part of that plant and animal residue go into atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So, this organic matter, depending on this transformation process, where the role of management comes here, that depending on your management practices, whether that is more conservation oriented or more disturbing, more aggressive management practice, whether to go into organic matter, go into atmosphere, that is determined right there at your management. So if you manage to go more into organic matter, then carbon dioxide emissions is reduced. That is also called greenhouse gas effect, and climate change. All that discussion goes into if we lose more organic matter into atmosphere, then we talk about those environmental issues. But if your conservation management is putting this residue more into organic matter pools, then it supports several other soil functions that support your agriculture, that support better downstream environment. So that way it is positive cycle, and then that is where we talk like farmers can be the solution to climate change and improving agricultural productivity. So if you have more organic matter serves as a building block. That organic materials tries to join soil particles together to form a better soil structure. Then when you have better soil structure, better water holding capacity, better infiltration capacity, and then more water and water storage, and then you see erosion, less erosion potential in those soils. Same way, when you have more organic matter, then its nutrient holding capacity is also high and it stores more nutrients. So that way, it supports multiple soil functions, and then overall soil health is centered around soil organic matter storage. I think you will hear more from other soil scientists here who will be speaking. So I will stop here and then go into this picture. This is the soil organic matter map for arid and semi-arid region, where we get less than 25-inch precipitation. If you look at the old map, half of the world is less than 700 millimeter precipitation, or arid or semi-arid ecosystem. And then if you look at the organic matter storage on these systems, specifically Western United States, where we are one of our state, we are in western part of the United States, where we have less than 50 ton carbon or 25 ton carbon per acre in our system. So relatively low carbon. Then what is driving this low carbon storage in this environment is high heat and low precipitation is the major cause of low organic matter storage in this system. And another aspect of it is our historic management practice. If we look at our agricultural history, this is the data from 2 locations in Kansas. You see in the first 40 years of farming, this is the very old data, I pulled 1957. Study that shows in 40 years we lost almost like 50% of organic matter since we started cultivation in this region. And then another study. So another study, I was lucky that I look at 80 years of different farming practices impact on soil carbon storage in Pendleton, Oregon. And then you see most of the, we compared several treatments, but I'm just providing a couple of examples. Except manure application, cattle manure application, all other treatments depleted soil organic carbon in topsoil almost to the same extent. It was almost like a 40 to 50% loss in organic matter storage. Then when I started working at New Mexico State University in Clovis Science Center location, then we did not have any long-term experiment in New Mexico, so I look at some of the farmers field who have long-term history of management. And then one of the neighbors field, we collected this data with native grass, livestock-based system, and then some dryland and irrigated farming practices. And then you can see, native grass to dryland farming, almost 60% loss of organic matter. And then dryland, native grass to irrigated farming, almost like a 30% loss in organic matter. So 30 to 60% range, depending on your management and agricultural system. So that shows pretty much consistent in western or central part of the United States. We are losing 30 to 60% organic matter in our fields, and then that have several impacts in soil health. So when we started discussing about looking at the carbon in New Mexico, carbon management, soil health status, where do we start? How do we go? And then we formed a committee in 2021 in NMSU with almost like 25 different faculty and started working on different ideas. So basic things we propose is understand baseline carbon status of different land use systems. Know the perception of farmers and general public about regenerative practices, soil carbon status, and then where to go as a next step in carbon management and soil health. And identify policy gap and a need for New Mexico to achieve carbon neutral, carbon negative land use sector. We have been talking in the state level or in the broader prospect. And also this project, particular project which is supporting this conference as one of the contributor. We also working on educating farmers, ranchers like this event. So working on multiple fronts to improve our understanding of soil health and carbon management. So this project involves multiple aspects, specifically on the research side. We are looking at multiple locations, this map represents New Mexico, different climatic regions. You see like different temperature regimes of New Mexico. And then our science centers, Agricultural Science Center of New Mexico State University, represent all these regions. And then we have ongoing projects looking at soil health, looking at soil carbon on these 7 out of 12 science centers across New Mexico. And then if you look at these projects, we are working on perennial cropping and agroforestry system. We are working on livestock integrated winter grazing systems. We are looking at annual cropping with different tillage management, irrigation management, different crop rotation practices, cover cropping practices, soil amendments in multiple locations, compost, biochar application, and then urban landscape and rangeland systems also. And then on these different locations, different focus in depending on the need of the area and the interest of the area producers. So we are collecting a lot of data. It is not possible to share all those information here, but I just wanted to give you the feel that in New Mexico we are working a lot to collect that baseline information and then understand what would be our best bet to improve our soil health and soil carbon in New Mexico. So these are some pictures of statewide soil sampling, and then some of the other project activities happening in different part of the state. And on these projects, our main approach on these projects is emphasizing on water and carbon together, because water is the major limiting factor in carbon storage in arid and semi-arid system. So our approach is more carbon per drop per unit water use. How can we improve carbon storage? And then there are two possible 2-3 different pathways to increase carbon storage. One is we need to produce maximum biomass per unit water we have in our arid and semi-arid landscape. Now that is identifying water efficient crops and cover crops, crop varieties, so that we identify those are best adapted to our region, arid and semi-arid region, or bring those varieties that is bred for these arid and semi-arid region or water limited environments. Deeper rooting, deep rooting, more recalcitrant rooting system so that the carbon stays longer in the ground. And then soil scientists and agronomists working on that carbon once that goes in the ground, conserving that carbon storage into the ground so that multiple ecosystem functions like soil health functions can happen in the soil. So reducing this upward arrow, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, minimizing, making that arrow small, and then downward process, improving the downward process so that more carbon, more organic matter, more nutrient stays in the soil so that it can provide agronomic function, environmental function, and other regulatory functions in your ecosystem. So that is the main goal of this project. And then strategies I already identified on that pictures also, like different practices have different potential to sequester carbon. For example, increasing cropping intensity and diversity, like cover cropping, diverse crop rotation can, in arid and semi-arid system, can sequester about 200 kg carbon per hectare per year. But some of the other practices have a more potential, and then some other practice like tillage management by itself, it can conserve carbon, but it doesn't aid carbon because tillage is about the disturbance, right? For increasing carbon storage, there is a need for more input. So without input, tillage itself cannot provide that benefit. But what is there in the soil, if you minimize tillage, that can help improving. That can help in storing that carbon in the ground or nutrient in the ground. And then more recently, looking at some of the practices like this frontier technology mentioned here, these technologies are identified as more carbon sequestration practices that can put more carbon in the ground. For example, breeding for deep-rooted crops, that can put carbon into the deeper profile, and then when you have a carbon in the deeper soil profile, it serves as like money in your saving account. The surface carbon is more active, more prone to disturbance activities, and then more prone to loss during disturbance activities. But if we put carbon more deeper into the profile, then that is disturbance impact is less. And then larger and more recalcitrant rooting system, that keeps carbon for a long time. And biofuel and biochar. Biochar is one of the another input that is identified as a more stable carbon, because when you make charcoal or make a biochar, then the stability of the carbon is much higher than other crop residue or compost application in the system. So these are the strategies, and then now I will run quickly on different research results. For example, we look at cover cropping and crop rotation practice in irrigated, limited irrigation and dryland situations, in crop and forest production system in eastern New Mexico. These all experiments were done in Clovis, New Mexico. And then these results show range of impact in irrigated condition, limited irrigation condition, and then dryland condition to different soil health indicators and different carbon indicators on this study. For example, most of the carbon indicators of soil health, soil organic carbon itself, we see 10 to 17% increase within 4 years of cover cropping. But it affected nitrogen is limited on those systems. Nitrogen storage have gone down because those cover crop immobilize some of the nitrogen, and then that residue decomposition ultimately will supply that nitrogen. But also that have some impact in water storage. I might not talk that water impact in cover cropping, but if you are interested, we can discuss that aspect. Another major thing we see on those cover crop experiment is when you have a more active root, soil biology was the major difference we see on those systems. Like earlier, John showed some data, but we see almost like fungal community is double, or some of the fungal components almost double with cover cropping system, and then that ultimately led to increase in soil aggregation and ultimately improve water infiltration also on these cover crop system as compared to no cover cropping system. And then on the no cover cropping field, now after 5-6 years of cover cropping versus no cover cropping, you can see more water pounding in the surface in no cover crop fallow system as compared to cover crop system. And then that ultimately led to difference in yield, specifically on irrigated system. That silage corn and silage sorghum yield was almost like a 4 ton higher with cover crop than without cover cropping. So that is the major difference, but we had different grass, brassica, legume, grass, brassica, and grass legume mixtures in cover crops. We did not see species-specific effect, but overall cover cropping, having a ground cover or having residue, specifically in summer, if you have a surface residue on the ground, that had the biggest effect in soil moisture, and ultimately that translates into yield and sustainability. And then another aspect we are looking is livestock integration, how that can impact in soil health and soil carbon. and we could see, you could see result here, conventional tillage, grazing system versus no tillage and strip tillage without the grazing. And then you see with livestock grazing, specifically on the top foot of the soil, we have a much more organic matter than no tillage or strip tillage itself. So in dryland situation, this experiment, looking at those fields with this different management, the livestock can play major role in adding more organic matter in surface soil. And then one of my graduate students, Pramod, is here now working on this project. Yeah, he did a greenhouse study looking at how these livestock could contribute to organic matter storage, and then we did a greenhouse study with a different amount of compost application: 0 ton, 3 ton, 6 ton, 9, 12, and 15 ton. And you can see the difference in root mass produced with more compost application. So it is not just like you add organic matter through compost, and then that compost is helping nutrient. It also strengthens root. So it is contributing. It has complementary effect in the root growth and contributed to soil organic matter storage. So that is another interesting observation in our field study. So that is another strategy. Then third one is conservation tillage. This one is a preliminary study. We have more data on this experiment also, and then only surface soil. The tillage impact is very interesting. If we look at on this one, tillage and cover cropping, you can see incremental effect of tillage in the surface soil. But if we look at the deeper profile, we observe a little bit different trend, because conventional tillage systems, stored a little more carbon in the deeper profile. But overall impact, what we see with the different tillage and cover cropping practice is when you do no tillage and cover cropping, more soil biological activity is much higher on those no-till and minimum tillage system. And biologically derived carbon is stored in the surface soil. And then with conventional tillage, more or less the same amount of carbon storage in the soil profile, but in arid and semi-arid system, much more carbonate carbon or inorganic carbon storage in a deeper profile in conventional tillage. That was our recent observation. We are still working on that data. So it was, here you see all positive with no tillage cover cropping, but we have more on this also we can discuss. And another strategy we just started working. I know Dr. Idaho have been working on biochar for several years. But we, in eastern side of New Mexico, we started some greenhouse experiment, and then now we also started some field experiment looking at how biochar and compost application, work, complement each other, or what is the interaction of cover cropping, compost, and cover cropping, compost application, and biochar application, and their interaction in different soil health properties. This preliminary result shows greenhouse result. We see big impact of cover cropping on in nitrous oxide reduction, because that is very high carbon material and it absorbs some of the nitrogen and then significantly reduce nitrous oxide emission. But we still need to see how that plays into actual field condition. Because in control condition, it is working great, and then we still need to see. And then in the biochar, the fertility interaction is another interesting work. And in eastern New Mexico, another interesting project we are working is innovative circular grass buffer strips. That integrating grass circular grass buffer into a crop production system. That also has some positive impacts. Still, we need to look at different aspects, but this grass integration, buffer strip grass, looking at different profile depths, having grass buffer, in the In the crop field, it increased carbon storage in the top surface, but grass itself contributed more carbon into a deeper profile. So perennial grass could be the way to go for deep profile carbon storage. That is learning from this experiment. So that is another work we are doing. And then as a part of this statewide carbon management project, we also have some work in the rangeland carbon project. We have a poster there. My postdocs will explain those. And then diverse land use systems in central New Mexico. We are collecting some more data, so we have more posters. And then Beacon Orchard carbon assessment project, and then other urban projects. We are still working on those data. And so based on these, some of these published, some of this ongoing work, and then some data still in analysis show that soil carbon stock in arid and semi-arid region is small, and carbon sequestration is slow in arid environment. Sometimes you hear a lot of information in the media, different kind of media, that the carbon sequestration, you can get a lot of benefit, but in arid and semi-arid environment, we see some positive response, but that magnitude of the difference we see with conservation practices is small as compared to some other regions. So that is, I think, we need to be mindful that our system have our own limitations. Regenerative management practices can increase carbon in surface soil, but in the deep profile, still we need to work more into some other practices. And climate variability is causing high uncertainty in carbon estimation, because our carbon storage is low, and then you see a little bit increase in carbon 1 year, but if it is dry, then you don't see that difference. So it is more challenging to quantify carbon storage, and its associated, quantify its associated impact on soil health and other properties in arid system. But what we also observed from these different experiments is stacking multiple conservation practices like cover cropping and conservation tillage, biochar, and then improve fertility management, or compost and integrating compost with chemical fertility management. Those might be the ways we can work together to improve carbon storage and improve soil health in arid systems. With that, I would like to thank, like earlier John mentioned, a lot of this work is done by students and postdocs, technicians working in the lab. So I acknowledge their contribution on different projects, and also funding agency and all the collaborators working on the project. With that, I will stop here. We will take questions.